So, hello again. This is part two of a series that I'm doing on my path in my life. I told you a few days ago that my situation with being incarcerated at Louisiana State Penitentiary was a 33-year bit that I served, and I served it with some very interesting characters, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. Excuse me, I mean that in an extremely positive sense, because had it not been for those men, I don't think that I, as a child going to the system, would have known how to develop myself as a man to be who I am today. I'm not who I am today out here in the free society because I was in any way, abused or went through any of the stuff you see on TV with locked up abroad and all that stuff. The institutions that I actually served time in Louisiana were geared more toward our education and betterment as people than anything else. And over time, throughout that 33-year bid, the institution's academic and VOTEC opportunities actually excelled, and they grew, and we were able to, as lifers, participate in a variety of different activities. I, of course, obtained my GED, serve, save, site layout one, site layout two. I have a number of skills, but my primary usage, as far as the prison was concerned, was as an instructor, a pre-GED instructor, and an instructor for self-help organizations. So what I want to do is go back, because I want to lead you up to the point to where I got into prison. And this may be the very last video on the subject of child abuse, but I want you to understand that my going to prison had nothing to do with me being born bad. I didn't come into the world perpetuating a crime upon anyone. So that behavior was a learned behavior. And in all children, that behavior is a learned behavior. Abusive behavior is something that children pick up and glamorize. It happened when I was a kid, being a boy, being, kind of strong. I was scrawny, but I was strong, and how that behavior actually opened the door to have me led to a place that I developed in to become the person that I am today. Like the brother said yesterday, prison didn't hurt me. It actually helped me. And just as a person would be proud to have been a graduate from a noted university or whatever, I'm proud of what I accomplished while I was there to become the person that I am while I was there. And again, I don't contribute any of that solely to myself, but to I have to give kudos to the men that I live with, because I didn't have any example as to how I was to conduct myself as a productive citizen in society, but from the people who were incarcerated with me. And I actually learned from them. I was groomed, and my mentality was nurtured by some of the best and brightest men that I've met on the face of the planet since I've been alive, and it just happened to be incarcerated. Not everybody that goes to prison because they were a bad person or were born bad or were born into the world doing bad things. Many of the people that actually entered prison had careers before they went there. They were engaged, tax-paying citizens while they were out here, and some unfortunate incident led them there. And I have to say unfortunate incident because I don't think it's anybody's desire to wake up one day and decide, hey, I'm going to go out here and violate the rights of another human being just so I can go to prison. I mean, you have to, something really got to be going on in the society itself for an individual to even perceive or have or conceive that kind of thought. So no, I wasn't born bad. I don't think people are born bad. I don't believe children are born bad. I don't believe that children are bad. I think that the society encourages the unproductive behavior in children by the things that children are subject to these days. So yesterday I was talking about my home environment, and today I want to continue on with that a bit more, just to give you a purview of what I believe led up to my having been placed in prison. So back to the different kinds of abuse. And this isn't just anything that goes on with male children. It goes on with female children. And in some cases, female children actually get the worst of the lot because female children are seemingly easy targets for predatory behavior patterns of people who have psychological illnesses that aren't being properly addressed in society. We just look at the situations that happen with female children and say, hey, what happened to that child was wrong, but no one is saying, well, what are we doing as a society that actually encourages that kind of behavior directly or indirectly? Directly or indirectly. There are some people that violate the rights of children because they think that it is an okay thing to do. And in certain communities where children are being reared, the standing belief in that community is that if a child, watch this, places themselves in a predicament to be mistreated, then that is the child's fault. Okay, the law says that no child is at fault for having been abused. The law says that no, it's not the child's fault if they are coming up in a community that is not properly caring for them, which brings me to the point to where, you've heard saying that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, then that's absolutely true in every aspect, in every respect. It's not just in home, but when the child leaves the home, the child becomes a responsibility of the community as a whole, to the extended community as far as the town is concerned, and even further than that as far as the world is concerned, because world over we're looking at children who are not being given a fair opportunity to grow and actually become productive citizens. And this is not the case for every child, which is why I said yesterday, please let's not get into the comparison situation and say, well, that happened to you, but that didn't happen to him. Or you were going through a bad time, but so were these kids over here, and it didn't happen to them. Each individual case is different. Each individual experience is different. Everything that a person goes through is unique in its own way for that person. And it may not be your experience, but it's that person's experience. And the most that we can do is have some compassion. So today, my topic is growing up abused, suffering silently. The reason why I have the subtitle, my title, is because for the most part, children don't have a say-so in how they're treated. They don't get to sit down at the table with the caretakers or the parents and say, okay, let's discuss how you're going to raise me. All right, let's put it all out on the table. Okay, I'm going to tell you how you're going to raise me, and you're going to agree or disagree, and we're going to discuss this. That's not the right that children have. The role that a child plays in a relationship inside of a household is that child is a child, and for the most part, we expect the child to obey and things of that nature. But here's what I want to tell you: if it's easy enough to understand the viciousness in an animal in the wild kingdom, what makes it so difficult for us to understand the natural role of a child in a household? When parents aren't, in my opinion, like I told you yesterday, no one went to my stepmother and my father and said, here's a manual that's going to teach you how to raise him. They had to kind of like wing this thing. And parents are winging it all the time. But there are certain elements that a parent cannot protect the child from, and that is the societal influences, the influences that the child will be under when they go to school, because for the most part, when the parent goes one way for work and the child goes the other way for school, the child is getting an education out there that he probably wasn't getting over here, and he's bringing that back home, and has a parent saying, oh my God, where did you get that from? Why are you behaving like this? And he doesn't have the words to articulate, well, my friends at school are so influential on me. It's not that I really want to smoke the weed, or I'm not that I wanted to drink the alcohol, or that I wanted to do this stuff here, but I just didn't have a clue. Just like most boys when I was coming up didn't have a clue that this thing we call running the train was actually statutory rape, because they don't get that kind of education. They don't get that kind of education. And because a child's mind is a sponge, they tend to draw in everything around them and try to process that information without having the proper guidance to put those things that's occurring in their lives in an order or perspective in their minds, to get them to understand that, well, these are the ways that you don't want to behave in, or these are the ways that you do want to behave in, but to this extent. So child abuse is a commonality in this country. I remember when I was a kid in the Deep South, one of the common things that we used to hear a lot was girls being molested and taken advantage of by grown men, by adults. And for the most part, these were men that they knew that were very close to them. Uncles, cousins, in some cases, step parents, or fathers. I was incarcerated with men that actually perpetuated these ills upon the children that they actually brought into the world because of a situation that they went through when they were a child and it was never dealt with. It's like I told you before. In prison, we deal with everything. We deal with anger, we deal with drugs, we deal with alcohol abuse, we deal with, all these things, we deal with them. But the one thing that's not really addressed and dealt with by and large, is the psychological traumatization of a mentality that was abused when it was an adolescent. And because these things were never faced in the person's life, they grew up perpetuating these same ills upon other people. And when you talk to them and ask them, why did you do that? They give you an honest answer. They say, I don't know. And the truth of the matter is that they really don't know because no one actually sat them down and worked with them on the problem. And no one was able to work with them because they didn't say anything. And they didn't say anything because they didn't know what was going on. And I'm not asking you to feel any kind of sorrow or anything for the person that perpetuates the crime. All I'm asking is that we begin to have an understanding of what goes on in our society. There are 3 million people, just about, incarcerated in this country. And this country incarcerates more people per capita worldwide than any other country. And I was locked up in the state that locks up more people per capita than any single place on the face of the planet. So yeah, we have an issue going on here. And it's not like crimes are lessening these days because of they're building more prisons. That's not making it less. The more and more you build a prison, the more they're going to need to finance the prison. Well, how do you think they're going to finance the prison? Well, they got to put people in society in the prison. That's how they're financed. But before people get there, I think that there are certain issues that can be addressed that can potentially deter certain unproductive behaviors that actually lead people to those places. Wherever you have a free society, anywhere in the world, there's going to be the need for law. Wherever you have a free society in the world, there's going to be a need for addressing those that break that law. Wherever you have a free society in the world where there are laws and rules that are established for people to enforce those laws, to put people in places to punish them for having broken those laws, there's going to also be a need for, listen to me, intervention. There's going to be a need for intervention. How do we intervene and come up with ways to deter a person from actually committing a crime? I don't have any solutions to share, to give you to say, well, we can do this and that, and a person won't molest a child. We can do this and that, and a person won't abuse a child. We can do this and that. And in some countries where they have conflicts going on, they won't use children for war and put AK-47s in their hands instead of soccer ball. Or in other countries, we can have a discussion and I can come up with a solution to give you that'll say, okay, well, then we'll start enforcing child labor laws and won't have children working for $1 an hour to create a product that's going to be sent to America where it's going to be sold for $50. All right. Okay. I don't have that kind of solution. I don't have those answers. What I do have is my own experience. And in my experience, I believe that because of the way that I was treated when I was a child, that it set me on the path to the prison system, where at 17 years old I entered and served 33 years and came out at 50. And mind you, I'm not trying to advocate to open the prison doors and let everybody run out. I mean, I was locked up with people that I don't want to see out here, all right, because they're not straight. All right. And I know this because I grew up in there around them. So I'm not trying to tell you that. I'm not trying to tell you that everybody that's in the prison houses need the case or advocating for the opening of the doors. But I am an advocate for this, that there are people that are incarcerated in there that have revolutionized the way that they view the world. There are people that are incarcerated in prison houses that have revolutionized how they look at the rights of other people. And it took going there for them to come into that realization. Now, here's the unfortunate circumstance with that. Even in those realizations, they're still going to die there, But while they're there, They are doing what I did and what other people are still in there doing. They are continuously, those same guys that are never going to get out, they are in there continuously working with other people who are going to reintegrate into society and helping them become better people so that when they go out, even though this guy isn't going to get out, he's going to work with this guy right here so that he can get out and do well and be able to shed a brighter light on what good can take place inside of the prison system. But the prison system that I was in was actually structured for that. Angola was structured for that. Elaine Hunt Correctional Center was actually structured for that. And how were they structured for that? We didn't have a lot of time to run around and do a lot of negative things to make our conditions worse. We were given an option. You can educate yourself. You can re-educate yourself. And then you could take a personal responsibility in your own education as a population, and you all can begin to work with each other. Now, that's just the reality of the prison that I came from. And I would suggest that any penal system, anywhere in America, whether it be here in Georgia or Texas or wherever, start giving your prisoners more opportunities to better themselves. And when they better themselves, and give them the opportunity to work with their fellow incarcerated individuals to help them better themselves. You know what's getting locked up in prison these days? I want to tell you what's getting locked up in prison these days. Guys who have construction skills, guys that were in the military and served 2 terms for this nation, Afghanistan and Iraq, guys that even served in Vietnam. Yes, there are incarcerated veterans in prison. You have business owners in prison. You have people with a lot of knowledge in prison that are able, and we get this help from them. They work with us. And when a child like myself going into that kind of adult environment, a caged environment with adults, I went in afraid, but I went in prepared. And what I mean by that is this. I went in afraid because of all the things that I've heard about the prison system, and Angola in particular. When I went in, I heard that it was the bloodiest penitentiary in the nation. And I was scared to death. I'm not about to sit up here and tell you I went in with my chest out, ready to do this and do that. I wasn't ready to do nothing but get on my knees and pray to God and say, Lord, please don't let them hurt me. But what I ran into when I got to the prison, don't get me wrong, the element of destruction does exist in any prison environment. It's there. All right. But the way that the administration in those prisons actually work with the inmate population, and they are continuing to do so today. There's so many people, the institutions there allow the outside communities to become personally involved with the activities that they are doing in there with the prisoners, that you have guys that are exiting Angola and Elaine Hunt Correctional Center in Louisiana, and they're coming out ready to enter the workforce, ready to pay taxes, fighting for the votes of fighting for the rights of prisoners to have the right to vote returned to them. There's victims' rights groups that are working to forgive and give guys a chance to come on back out, because again, for me, the issue was I come up psychologically traumatized in a home that unintentionally, and I have to say unintentionally, because I don't think that they ever foresaw me going to prison either, no matter how bad I was treated. I don't think that the people that mistreated me in my home ever thought that I would wind up in prison. I think that some part of their psyche was telling them, well, we're going to do this to him, and we're going to beat him like this, and we're going to send him to bed hungry, and we're going to treat him this way so that, he won't grow up and be this way and that way and that way and that way and that way. And then it got to the point to where that abuse became so normal that stopping wasn't an option, but continuing was the order of the day, and many men and women that are sitting in prisons right now today, if you were to sit down and talk with them and ask them what they believe led them to prison, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, we try to avoid being mistreated at home because the people that we are talking to don't want to hear that. The people that we're speaking to, for some reason, they're not looking for that. It's as if it's like having a conversation with someone and you already got the questions and the answers already drawn up in your mind. It's impossible for you to have a conversation with someone like that if you're trying to talk to them and ask them questions, but you already have the answer that you want them to give you. How are you going to have a conversation with someone and you have the questions, but you already know what you want them to tell you? No matter what they tell you, you're not going to be pleased with it because they're not answering you according to your expectation. That's not having a conversation with someone. When you're talking to somebody in prison, I guarantee you this. Ask them about their upbringing. Ask them about where they come from. Ask them about where they come from. If you're talking to a guy that's in prison, the one thing he's not going to want to talk to you about is how he was treated in his household. And that's not to say that every guy that came up or every guy that entered prison was abused at home. But there's certain levels of abuse that we do not understand. There's certain levels of abuse that even an adult in this country do not understand. Abuse can take place from these. And these days, a lot of abuse is taking place from these dealing with children because they have access to the world. It's right there in the palm of their hand. They're exposed to things that were kept away from those of us that come up in the 60s and the 70s. You know, they've got the entire world in the palm of their hand. And who's watching them? Who's watching them? And no matter what you put on it for them not to be able to get into the stuff that you don't want them to see, like I said, when you go that way to work, they go this way to school. And there are knowledgeable kids in the school that are helping them get on there. And because as a society, we haven't found a way to actually do anything about circumventing the child that's smart enough to, you know, bypass any code or password or security system that you put on it. So the child is subject to what goes on in the world. And that's a whole completely different kind of abuse because there's nothing that you can do about it and nothing the child can do about it. If the child gets caught doing it, there are some states that actually punish the person for the behavior of that punish the parent for the behavior of the child. And that too is something that, you know, I'm completely against. I think that if a parent is to be held accountable for anything, a parent should be held fully accountable for how they are grooming their child at home. And if you truly love your child, then you will groom your child in a way to where they will be able to go out into the society and surpass you in all of your accomplishments. In my situation, that wasn't the case. And my situation is so many other people's situation the world over who I want to encourage with this video, because it's going to be the last one that I'm going to be doing. It's the second one, but it's also going to be the last one because I really got to get on my story about when I entered prison. I have so many people telling me they want to know, you know, how I became the person I am. What were you doing in there that you came out and you were able to, you know, articulate things the way that you do? And I really want to share that because I'm proud of my accomplishments. I'm embarrassed by the fact that I had to go and accomplish the things that made me who I am while I was in prison. But I'm also pleased by the fact that the things that I did accomplish groomed me into the kind of person that came out here. And I'm loved by many. You know, people don't fear me. I didn't come out with tattoos. I don't have any tattoos. You know, I'm not a big old guy with muscles and everything, you know, with a bad attitude and feel like the world owed me nothing. Like I told you the other day, I don't feel like the world owed me nothing but lessons. And I've learned mine hard. I'm still learning right now, you know. But the primary lesson that I've learned in my life is that I suffered silently when I was a child. And I suffered silently because I didn't have the power to say anything. And so what I want to say right now is I'm not upset or angry with my parents for having done what I consider to be the best that they could to raise me, bring me up. I'm not going to say raise me, but bring me up in the way that they best knew how. I think that it was that the envy and the jealousy of my step parent was a natural thing. You know, she didn't have any children when my mom passed and I was brought to them. And so she's looking at the firstborn child of a man she fell in love with, and it's not hers. So the dislike for the woman kind of spilled over to the child. And see, that's what makes child abuse so bad. And that's why children tend to suffer silently, because a child cannot defend against that. A child screams silently when they are being mistreated by the people who are supposed to love them. They are screaming on the inside. And sometimes those screams come out in the way that they behave. They become shy, withdrawn children. In other instances, they become what we call bad children, and they do a lot of things that make the person say, well, why are you acting like that? Well, I'm not being loved at home, I'm being abused at home. Or I have things going on in my head and nobody's talking to me. And no, the child can't tell you how to talk to them. You have to have the wherewithal to sit down and just be straight up with them. You know how we always saying keep it real? These days, you have to keep it real with children. And I firmly believe that. The kids I spoke to that they brought up there to the prison to come and talk with me, there was something that I learned about them. One, I couldn't scare them. So I didn't try. All right. Because I wanted to reach them. So I observed them. And one of the things I knew that fear tactics wasn't going to work with them. They weren't afraid to come to jail because they are being psychologically abused by a lot of the music they listen to, where prison environments are actually glamorized. So couldn't scare them with that. I couldn't scare them with violence because they are living a reality where every day they're being told to keep a watch out because the world is trying to hurt them. It's trying to kidnap them. It's trying to put them on the international market and sell them as sex slaves. And these are things that they're hearing all the time. So didn't scare them with that. So what do you tell them? Well, I told them what I wasn't told when I was a child, and I was able to reach not only them, but in some instances when the parent actually came with them, and they were at their wits' end. They didn't know what to do. You know, as a parent, sometimes parents become so afraid of their children actually going out into the world and getting into things that they don't want them to get involved in, that they. This is what I'm gonna say. They overlove them. They love them so much that they shackle them to that love. And in doing that, they emotionally disturb the child. Because the way that kind of shackled love expresses itself is oftentimes with insults, physical abuse, um, making them afraid of God and the devil by telling them they're going to go to hell, you know. And we can do better as a society. We can do better as a society. And one of the things that we can begin to do is this: make child abuse a subject. Make child abuse on any level a subject. Recognize child abuse from whatever angle it's coming from. See it, note it, address it, begin to have discussions on it. Children are hearing enough about race. And yes, racism exists. No, racism hasn't gone anywhere. Yes, racism is evolving just like the rest of us are evolving. But if you are dealing with a child who is confronted with racism every day, you're going to have to sit that child down and begin to have discussions with that child about what they are out there experiencing because of the way they look, because of how coarse their hair is, because of the people they come from. You're going to have these discussions with them. Unfortunately, you have to have those discussions with them. I'm sorry. If it's a religious issue, you have to sit down and begin. If you're living in a country where your religion is state law and you're watching this, then I'm telling you right now, in order for you to not have the hatred and dislike that's perpetuated by people who run the government embedded in your child, you're going to have to tell your child, yes, this is our belief, but this is not the proper way to practice it. Yes, this is the way that we believe, but this is not the proper way to express ourselves religiously to other people. Because I'm telling you again, when you go this way to work, that's your child on their way to school. And school isn't always the building they go to learn their ABCs from the books. Sometimes school is the streets that they're learning from on their way to the place where they go learn their ABCs. Sometimes after school, school becomes another place on their way back home when they're circumventing and going around the neighborhood to make their way home. And it's learning about the drugs, and they're encountering people who are taking advantage of them in ways that you think you're protecting them from because you're overloving them. If you cuss them out all the time, they're gonna go find somebody that's gonna tell them something good. And that person don't always mean them any good. If you're hitting on them, they're going to go try and find people that they can hang around that's going to love on them. And those people may eventually have them led to a way that you don't want them going. Sometimes we can overdo it. I'm not telling you to be your child's friend. I'm telling you to begin to communicate with them because they're already exposed. What are you trying to hide them from? They're already exposed. When I came up, I was treated the way I was treated because I think my parents thought that they could keep me from being exposed to a lot. But I also believe that a lot of envy and dislike was in that too. And that's something that I think that when you're dealing with the issue of child abuse, one of the key things I believe that psychologists and all should focus on is dealing with the parent, not so much with the child. because it's just a given. If you're abusing the child toe up already. So let's put the child to the side for a second. All right. Okay, let's deal with the parent. All right. I mean, really, really deal with the parent and dig down in there like they do in Buddhism. They say that the way a person behaves is tied to a past where that behavior was perpetuated on them. And the person believes that what they are doing is right. You can hear it in what they say. Well, when I was a little girl, or well, when I was a little boy, they actually think that it's right. Beating my child and giving him a black eye is good. I mean, my daddy knocked me out. Okay, girl, you went through that. He raped you and all that. But it's okay. I went through it too. You're gonna get over it. You're gonna be all right. No, see, they're not gonna get over it, and they're not gonna be all right. They're gonna live with that pain for the rest of their lives. And God bless the ones of us who have gone through abuse and have not perpetuated our treatment onto someone else who is undeserving. Bless you. God bless you. I know it has not been easy. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult to find anyone to talk to. But I want to tell you right now, my name is Willie Campbell. And if you've suffered any kind of abuse as a child, and if you are a person who believes that you're treating your child just a little too harshly or over-loving them to the point to where you think that you're actually hurting them, I want to tell you this: that child is going to grow up. That child is going to remember everything that you put them through while rearing them. And one of the things you do not want them to do when you look at your grandchildren is to look you in your face and tell you, don't tell me how to bring my child up. You did it to me, so don't tell me nothing. We can intervene now. Intervention needs to begin now, both with the parents that are raising up children who are abused and with the children who are abused, because you can't deal with the child that's being abused if you don't go through the parent anyway. And parents these days are abusing kids in ways that they don't even understand as abuse. So laws have to be made, So the government's stepping in now, and I don't think that that's necessary, but it becomes a necessity when the parent throws their hands up and says, hey, I just don't know what to do anymore. So somebody steps in to show them what to do. In prison, we used to say, if you don't want to do your own thinking, there's a long line of people standing over there that's ready to do it for you. And they may not do it in your best interest. So, and of course, we know the government didn't do too well. They came up with Ritalin and everything else. And if you as a parent was running around saying your kid was toe up psychologically, the government was saying, hey, give them this pill right here. When it gets to the point to where you throw in the towel and say, I don't know what to do anymore, a long line of people back there, there's a long line of institutions back there waiting to step in and intervene and do it for you. So yes, child abuse began my road to incarceration. It did. And I think that I don't think my parents were evil. I just think that they didn't know anything better to do. I think my stepmother was brought up in a way that was so hard that it hardened her. I think my dad was brought up in a way to where he was so hard that it was easy for her to manipulate him. But I honestly believe in my heart that they had all good intentions. They just didn't know how to go about applying those good intentions. They didn't know how to go about doing better by me than what was done by them. Your children should not have to suffer in silence. Your grandchildren, if you are a grandparent, you watch your grandchildren, interact with them. I didn't say control them. I didn't say put your foot on them. I said interact with them, play with them, talk with them, dance with them a while, find out what they like to eat, because children have a tendency, just like you did when you were a child. Through play, a lot of things come out, and you're able to address them and deal with them without taking away their natural born right to be a child. You can interact and intervene without stripping them of their childhood. My childhood was stripped. There are many people who walk the face of the planet these days whose childhood was stripped. And I'm not going to say that they became the worse for it, but they have done things to violate the rights of other people that landed them in the places where they have found themselves. But I got to give them a thumbs up that even in spite of all that, they got themselves together well enough to work with other people that came under the same circumstances and situations, and they were able to actually stand in that person's shoes and say, I know where you come from. I know where you've been. I want to help you. Be that kind of person that says, I understand. I know where you come from. I know where you've been. I just want to help you. Not just the child. Sometimes you got to work on the person that's caring for the child. Kid you not. And in working with them, what you'll find out is that they conduct themselves the way they do with children because they were treated the same way. Let's love and have a lot more compassion. The next time I come on here, I'm going to take you to prison with me. Tell you everything that went through my head when I got picked up by the police. Oh, yeah. Y'all be blessed. Joan Chavis, I love you. And thank you for your post. It says, bless you for telling your truth and helping many others that are suffering in silence. You're welcome. And for those of you that are suffering in silence and that are watching this or are going to watch this later or going to have this shared to you by someone else who's watching this, I want to tell you, you don't have to contact me. If there's anything that I've said that can inspire you to reach out to someone else, and if it's not you and if it's someone else that you know, get people to start talking. Get them to start talking. This is something that I don't know if there's any advocacy groups out there for this kind of thing or whatever. That's not why I'm doing this, but I do know that I'm not the only one that's walking the face of the planet with a situation like this, with an experience like this. It's not my story. It's the story of many millions the world over. And we need to talk. Women, get involved with what's going on with women around the world. Malcolm X said that suffering anywhere in the world is suffering everywhere in the world. Women have come a long way, and women suffered silently for a long time. And in many respects, in the job market and stuff like that, women are still suffering. Doing the same work, or if not, in many cases, more work than the men on the same job, and getting less pay. That is abuse. That's what that is. Equal work for equal pay. And they deserve that. I think that we ought to stand for justice and we ought to stand for what's right. And we ought to support those who suffer silently, whether they be children or adults. And in dealing with them, deal with the person who is perpetuating the ill upon them. What you'll find out in many instances, they're doing the exact same thing that other people that was done to them. Y'all be blessed. Be a blessing.